Welcome back to the program. Children are not born with hatred in their hearts. Children are not born to be radicals. Children are not born to hate others. But the reality is, they can be taught, and be taught they are, by their parents, by their community, by their church, by their friends, by a whole litany of influences and different people. And that is the story of Zohran Mamdani. This was a child born to hate, brought up to hate, taught to hate. Now, I said I was going to do a deep dive into Mamdani, and it's taken me some time, but that deep dive starts right now. Let me tell you some information about this guy. So, first and foremost, he was indeed born in Uganda, in Kampala. Him and his family and his grandparents, they all lived in that country. They were also a minority in that country because they were Asians or Indians. Back in 1972, under the dictatorship of Idi Amin, Idi Amin came about and he had a declaration that stated that all Asians have 90 days to leave the country. As such, little Mamdani, at 7 years old, and Mira Nair, his mother and director of some movies, which we'll get into in a little bit, and Mahmoud Mamdani, his father, they had to leave immediately because of the declaration by Idi Amin. Let's get into this a little bit further. So, his great-great-grandparents came to East Africa from Gujarat, India. 4 or 5 of her children had died very young, according to the family. A village elder told her that the only solution was to, quote, cross the ocean. East Africa had a significant South Asian population. The British brought the Indians over as indentured slaves and laborers to help build the railroads in the 19th century, many of whom stayed and prospered. The family first lived in Tanzania, then Uganda, for generations. But in August of 1972, Ugandan dictator Idi Amin announced on the radio that every Ugandan of South Asian origin had to leave the country within 90 days. Instantly, the family was rendered stateless, and they were not even allowed to bring their belongings with them. They left everything behind, and they moved. Mamdani's father's family lived in refugee camps in Britain, facing exclusion from British society. Zohran recalls a story that his father recently told him about their time in Britain. Quote, after they left the camp, he said, they moved into a more permanent residence. They would still, every Sunday, go to Gatwick Airport in London and watch the planes take off at Entebbe, Uganda's international terminal, and would just sit and let their hearts kind of soar with the plane as it climbed into the sky and crashed into the clouds. Eventually, Idi Amin was overthrown and the family did return back to Kampala. Yet, Mamdani says that they were never able to, quote, reclaim who they were before expulsion. His grandfather had been a poet and an auctioneer and a much-loved community leader. After the expulsion, his grandson says, quote, he didn't work another day in his life. The only way I knew him was apparently as a shadow of himself. Mamdani himself lived in Kampala until he was 7 when his family came to the United States. And that's what we know mostly about him. Now, this is how he announced when he was running on his campaign. This was for state assembly, not even for the mayoral candidacy in New York. Quote, I am running for state assembly because it's time to guarantee, this is his words, guarantee housing to all New Yorkers as a, quote, right, regardless of their ability to pay for it. So he's a Marxist, right? To each from one's ability, according to their needs, from each one's ability to pay for it, right? So that's what he is. It's time to desegregate our schools, fully eliminate cash bail. So that means you can murder somebody in the streets of New York, and Zoran the moron has no problem with you just being out and about, and no problem. We probably won't even prosecute you. Go ahead and kill as many people as you want. Fully eliminate that. Ban solitary confinement. So even if you're the worst of the worst criminals and you need to be separated from the rest, he doesn't believe in that either. Fund and fix the Manhattan Transit Authority, end workplace discrimination, and of course fight for social, racial, economic, and all the other environmental and all that garbage as well. Okay? This is how radical he is. But he has been taught this. Okay? Now, let's jump over to Mahmoud. His father is a professor at Columbia University. So when all these people, students for Palestine and everything else, which, by the way, Mamdani was the original person who created that organization at his college, Baldwin College in Maine. He was the #1 person that did it. It originated originally in the early 90s in Los Angeles. But he was the first one to put it on his college campus in Maine. It gets even more crazy. So a Columbia University professor, he is sympathetic to groups involved in violence against Israel, violence against Jews, has downplayed the external factors of that. He's anti-colonial, he's anti-West, and he has written a bunch of books that are also anti-white and, of course, anti-West and colonialism and all that. So let's get into this a little bit further. So he is the Herbert Lehman Professor of Government. He received his PhD from Harvard University in 1974, specializing in the study of African history and politics. His work explores the intersectionality, they always have to use those weird words, right, these leftists, between politics and culture, a comparative study of colonialism since 1452, the history of civil war and genocide in Africa, the Cold War and the War on Terror, and the history and theory of human rights. Prior to joining Columbia's faculty, Mahmoud Mamdani was a professor at the University of Dar es Salaam in Tanzania from 1973 to 1979, Makerere University in Uganda 1980 to 1993, and the University of Cape Town 1996 to 1999. He received numerous awards and recognitions, including being listed as one of the top 20 public intellectuals by Foreign Policy and Prospect UK magazine in 2008. From 1998 to 2002, he served as president of the Council for the Development of Social Research in Africa. And of course, his essays have been in New Left Review, Daily Cause, another communist organization, London Review of Books, and so many others as well. Now, he has also given multiple speeches on his anti-Semitic tropes, how he hates Jews, how he has sympathy for Chinese communists, which seems to be a normal kind of rite of passage, if you will. And going back to Zoran or whatever, he's also been endorsed by the Democrat Socialists of America. Not only been endorsed, but he's on their board. He has been working with them for many, many years. And they nominated, get this, 13 socialists for office. Thankfully, only 5 won, of which he was one of them. And they were all funded by the money laundering operation, Act Blue. Promoted the Democrat Socialists of America, was promoted by New York Socialists in December of 2020. Support 13 socialists running for office. DSA, for many, is back and we're bigger than ever before. In 2020, you helped send Jabari, Julia, Farah, Marcella, and Zoran to Albany to fight for the working class people of New York. Total garbage. So he's a big-time communist. He started, which I think should be a terrorist organization, Justice for Peace of Palestine. And he calls all of his people that he knows and friends all comrades, right? So this is who he is. And I find this even more interesting. Listen to this. His mother, Mira Nair, is an Indian-American director, producer, and writer. Her films include Mississippi Masala and Monsoon Wedding. She's also ardently anti-Israel. She hates Benjamin Netanyahu. She's even refused to go and step foot into the country of Israel because that's how much Jew hatred she has. So for her son to run around screaming, globalize the intifada, where do you think he learned this type of coercive and evil behavior? From mom and dad, okay? Now, I'm not giving him a pass. Don't think I am. Because we can always be better than the racist parents that many of us may have had, right? Not me, but just saying in general. We can learn to be different and be better. So this is on him. He's 33 or 34 or whatever years old he is. He's an adult. He should know better. But you know what? It was drilled into him. It was instilled into him. And it was so instilled into him that he talks about it all the time. And his mother actually wrote and directed and produced a movie based on his life. Not Zoran's life. Her life with her husband. Okay? Listen to this. There's a movie, and you should all watch it. If you really want to know who Zoran Mamdani is, then you should probably watch the movie Mississippi Masala, starring Denzel Washington. Okay? Because here's the plot. Remember what I told you about Idi Amin? Remember what I told you about how they had to leave Uganda and all that? Listen to this. Plot. In 1972, same year, dictator Idi Amin enacts a policy of forceful expulsion of Asians from Uganda. Jay, rather than Mahmoud, right? Jay and his wife Kinu, well, it can't be, what's her name? Mira, so we have to switch it to Kinu, right? So Jay is Mahmoud and Kinu is Mira, the wife, the one that made the movie, and their daughter Mina. Okay, so instead of Zoran was Mina. So instead of having a boy, they had a girl. Okay, why? Okay, wonderful. That's lovely. So Jay and his wife Kinu and their daughter Mina, a family of Ugandan Indians residing in Kampala, the exact same location they had to leave, reluctantly and tearfully leave their home behind and relocate. After spending a few years in England, just like we said, the family settled in Greenwood, Mississippi. Okay, so there's a difference, right, between New York, obviously, Mississippi. It can't all, match it perfectly. To live with extended family members, and who knows, maybe they did. Maybe they have connections to Mississippi. I don't know. I'll keep looking to see if I can find it. Family members who own a chain of motels there. Despite the passage of time, Jay, Mahmoud, unable to come to terms with his sudden departure from his home country and cannot fully embrace the American lifestyle, his dreams of one day returning with his family to Kampala, the effects of Amin's dictatorship had caused Jay, Mahmoud, to become distrustful of black people. But yet his son decides to try to get into college saying that he was black because, I don't know, maybe he didn't score so high on his SATs as someone that's Asian or Indian should. And so instead he said, maybe I'll get in with lower scores and say I'm black. That's what happened. Mira, close enough, on the other hand, has fully acclimated to American culture and has diverse group of friends. She feels stifled by her parents' wish to only associate with members of their own community. She falls in love with Demetrius. This is, of course, Denzel Washington's character. A local African-American self-employed carpet cleaner. Mira is aware that her parents will not approve and keeps the relationship somewhat secret. The pair decide to spend a romantic clandestine weekend together in Biloxi, where they are spotted by members of the Indian community, and the gossip begins to spread. Jay, Mahmoud, is outraged and ashamed and forbids Mira, from ever seeing Demetrius again. Mina also faces both subtle and outright dislike from Demetrius's community. Demetrius confronts Jay, Mahmoud, who reveals his experiences in racist treatment in Uganda, yada, yada, yada. Mic drop. So you have a child who is 7 years old, who was raised by rabid Jew haters and communists, and because of an unfortunate incident in 1972 in their home country, where a dictator threw them out of their home country, they decided to hate. And like I said, you're not born with it. You're raised in it. And he was raised to hate. And that's what he does. He hates. And he needs to be stopped. Absolutely needs to be stopped. Now, last thing I'm going to say, because we're going to keep this just on Zohan, or Zoran, or whatever its name is. The polling has come out. Now, I mentioned after he won his primary, I said, that's his ceiling. He's not going any higher than that. And guess what? I'm correct. Okay? He has already dropped down at least 10 points from his quote-unquote victory on primary night. Now, I've been talking about Eric Adams as the possible independent candidate that would run, and I added up all the people and I explained that if all these people dropped out and everyone voted for him, then he would win by 8, 9, 10 points. Well, a couple things. Number one, the bad publicity and press and negative stories are piling up on him, from the dreidel incident where he mocked Hanukkah to, of course, Sean McGuire from Sequoia Capital calling him out as a terrorist and everything else, to so many other stories, to him lying to get into school. So the negatives are going to keep coming out, okay? People like me, when we hear them, other people, we're all going to go on social media and we're going to continue to beat down Zohan to make him unelectable. That's our goal by whenever it is. I think it's September or October is when the general election is. I think it's September. So there's not a lot of time left. But a couple of people have joined the race. Curtis Sliwa, he's running like 14%. And believe it or not, Adams is even less. He's like at 11%. So apparently the people in New York really don't like Eric Adams. Now, maybe that's because he's been a little closer with Trump and he wants to crack down on illegals. I don't know the answer to that. But he's even losing to Cuomo with black voters, okay? Which is insane. So Cuomo is now thinking of jumping back into the race and running as an independent. If he does that, then Sliwa's got to drop. And, of course, Eric Adams, they have to drop. We've got to get rid of anyone else. Now, do I want everyone to go out there and vote for the grandma killer? Not really. But would I rather have grandma killer than Jew killer? Yeah, pretty sure I would. Okay? Pretty sure I would. So I think that's what's going to happen, because the polling is a lot closer between Cuomo and Mamdani. So now we can only hope that somebody steps up. More than likely it's going to be Cuomo. And the people in New York, you're going to have to hold your nose. You're going to have to say, yeah, this guy killed, my parents and my grandparents, and he's a piece of garbage and this and that. But your city and this country is at risk if you allow Mamdani to win. Because as I have said, and will continue to repeat myself, if he wins, it's going to embolden so many other candidates that will be endorsed by the DSA, the Democrat Socialists of America. And you know what, to be quite frank, President Trump, he ought to immediately designate the Democrat Socialists of America as a terrorist organization, because they are a terrorist organization and they support people that get support from actual terrorist organizations. Hamas, Hezbollah, CARE, so many others, right? So President Trump ought to do that, because if he does that, gone. Mamdani is gone. And quite frankly, probably his father and maybe even his mother too, because they are all supportive of Hamas and Hezbollah. Denaturalization. That's what needs to happen. But in the meantime, if it doesn't happen in time, and this psycho, absolute psycho Jew hater somehow wins, you are going to see city after city after city after city putting up Democrat Socialists of America comrades, funded and endorsed, to run in all those primaries, in Democrat primaries, all around the country. Take my words serious, okay? Because I'm giving the warning now. I don't want to be right again, okay? I honestly don't. I want to see this guy defeated. And if that means the grandma killer who likes to grope women is the only choice, well, so be it. Those are my thoughts. What are yours? Put them down in the comments below. We'll see you in the next one.